Hey guys, we're back with another episode of Fully Spooled, and today we are installing the fuel system. So here we have all the pieces for the fuel system, starting with the AEM in-tank fuel pump, followed by the C5 Corvette FPR, and then we have the braided stainless steel fuel hose, which is a 3/8 inch or 6 AN. We have a bunch of fittings. I went with Russell fittings for that. And then we have the factory LS2 intake manifold and the factory LS2 fuel rail and fuel injectors. Like with the engine and the transmission, a lot of these parts I bought originally to put on a different car, so I've already started some of the work actually years ago on this. Like for example, on the FPR here, I already installed these Russell fittings onto these fittings right here for the FPR, as well as this piece right here. For the fuel pump, I went with AEM's 50-1200 fuel pump in-tank kit, and what's cool about this pump is that it is a hybrid between an E85 and a gasoline pump. So I can run gasoline now while I'm naturally aspirated, and then later on, when I install the turbo, I can just run E85 through the exact same pump. And this will support my power gains, no problem. So here we have the in-tank filter, the pump itself. Oh, it's really in there. Here's the pump. And then we have what looks like some hoses and a vibration dampening foam piece and some other fun stuff. So there we have. Also, we have our wiring for directions. As you can see here, it pumps 320 liters per hour at 43 psi, and it is 100% compatible with gasoline, ethanol, and methanol. Pretty awesome. Oh, my SC300 badge is completely falling apart. Alright, so looking at the fuel tank back here, it looks like all those fuel lines that I need to pull out are behind the tank here, between the tank and the back seats of the car. So I'm going to have to, I guess, drain the fuel tank and then unbolt these bolts down here, pull the entire tank out so I can get access to those lines back there, which is going to be super fun. I'm not even sure actually which, well, that could be the fuel pump, but there's three of these things here. There's one here, there's one on top, and I think there's one on the front side as well. Oh, that came right off. Yeah, okay, so this is definitely the bobber for the fuel level sending unit, which is this whole thing. Oh, it's all nasty. Oh, if this is this dusty and nasty, what does the inside of the tank look like? Alright, so in the back of the car here, and I think the fuel pump's under here, if I can get this thing off. That was easy. Yep, that's where the fuel pump access is. Or am I crazy and there's no fuel in there? Actually, it looks totally empty. Alright, well, that's even easier. Alright, so looking inside the tank here, it's empty. There's no gas, which makes things a lot easier to handle for sure. So the good thing is there's no rust. You know, the tank is in really good shape. The only kind of annoying thing is this kind of sort of like yellowish dust everywhere, and I don't want that to be in there when I put my brand new tank in, so got to find a way to get this dust out. Alright, so I think my plan of attack here is going to be to take out this fuel pump assembly, which means these bolts here, and then this guy. Basically, you know, the entire pump will come out. That way I can fit, hopefully, actually, yeah, I can fit my entire hand inside the hole here, so I can go through with a rag of some sort or some kind of cleaning agent and get all this white yellow powder out of the bottom of the fuel tank. Oh, that's awful. So much for the filter. That's really bad. Here we have the fuel lines underneath the tank, and this is above the rear differential and the axles. and these lines are keeping the tank very solidly in place. So I'm gonna pull these out, but it's gonna be super hard to film myself, so just take my word for it. There we go. So it's the following morning and the tank has dried out overnight, and it's in okay shape. It's got some rust inside, it's got a little bit of residue left over from whatever that white powdery substance was, but for the most part I think it's clean enough that I can use this at least until I get a fuel cell down the road. So now I got to figure out how to mount the pump in the tank. This is the factory pump with the bracket, and you can see it's still a freaking mess. So I can just take the pump off, put on the new pump, and then attach it to this factory tube right here, which then connects to this tube, which goes up and through the pump to the bottom, and then comes out here. Another option would be to actually just install like an AN bulkhead fitting onto the tank somewhere or onto one of these covers and run a line straight from the tank out to the FPR. I think though, what I'd like to be able to do, because I'm not going to use this one forever, I don't want to sink a lot of money into it, I just want to get it running. So what I'm going to try to do is just put the new pump on the stock bracket here, attach it up the right way, and hopefully it'll just be able to basically be running the way it did from the factory. Alright, so here we are at the bottom of the tank, and we have our original pump feed and return lines here. Then we have either like an EGR or EVAP, something line on this side as well. And I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to run the fuel lines from the tank to the FPR and then to the engine. And I was talking with Glenn Haleski, hopefully I'm saying his name right. He says that there is actually a fitting that is designed to fit right into the tank itself, getting rid of this guy, which is sort of this little piece here that clips in, and it has this little bar right here that goes into this little hole. And for some reason, Toyota decided to drill this hole all the way through the tank, so this will leak fuel if you don't have either a gasket here or something to cover that off if you're going to put a like AN fitting directly into this hole right here. So talking with Glenn, he says that there's a part, which is this one, Earl's 991945, which will in theory bolt right into these holes here, and then what I'll have to just do is cover up this hole here either with JB weld or actual just pop a little bead of weld in there, and hopefully with this little washer I can just screw it right in, and then I have my lines ready to go right out of the tank, which is really awesome. So this is the moment of truth here. I gotta make sure this thing actually threads in, and if it does, we should be golden. Yeah. Oh, that's great. So with that in there, and with this little washer, with this little rubber gasket, sealing any possible leaks, I just need to figure out how to block off this hole and that little hole right there, and then I have the ability to just run my braided stainless steel line straight from this fitting to my FPR. And then this guy right here is a 6AN to 5/16 inch nipple, which I should be able to pop on this guy. And now I'll be able to use this as my FPR, my fuel return from the FPR. Oh, this is great. So even though this gas tank's been out of the car for a few weeks and it's been airing out, it still smells like gas if you get a really good whiff in there. So I'm going to skip welding these holes shut and just use this JB water weld. And this is like a JB weld, but it's heavy duty and it's designed specifically for use with gasoline. So I can just use this stuff to fill these two little holes here, and then I'll just kind of, make sure it's nice and flat, so when I put my new AN fitting on there, it won't interfere with the actual seal that I'll have from the water weld. So this stuff is super easy to use. You just pop the top off, and this little tube comes out. And then I've already used this once on my Talon to seal the gas tank years ago, and it's held up great ever since. So this is still a little hard, I think. So you just kind of take the hard edge out, and then you have what's left is you have your outer and then your inner epoxy, which is just like a regular JB weld, but you just need just a little bit for a hole this size. then we'll just peel this plastic off. Then you just mix it together until it's all the same color, and basically just stuff it in the hole. So the JB weld is cured overnight, so I'm going to go and just kind of run over it with my little sanding block really quick to just smooth out this top edge here, so when I put my little gasket on, it'll be a smooth seal. Alright, so that feels nice and smooth now. So we have the top one is the fuel feed and the bottom one is the fuel return. So I'm just going to stick my fittings in here. So then we have our 5/16 barb right here, which we just pop through in here and put it on the bottom side where the fuel return goes from the FPR. And then we have our fittings, very simple. Now this side goes to a vent in the top of the tank, so I can actually leave this completely open as long as I seal off this other hole down here. So we should be good to go on the tank. All right, now we have the fun task of replacing the pump with this new AEM unit. So I gotta pull apart this whole piece here, which is really in bad shape, but I'll just go through and clean all this stuff up. Oh crap, there we go. Well, there's the old pump in all its glory. That is crazy, crazy how bad this thing fell apart. I'm not sure if this stuff was actually originally this like kind of gel, or if it was like an actual rubber piece like this that just melted over time or dissolved in the fuel. But either way, I gotta clear it out the best as I can. It looks like I need to modify this a bit because of how this piece is designed. It's not going to go around this, so I might have to just cut this little tip and this little tip right here off just so this thing can slide all the way in and fit flush to the bottom of this piece of metal right here. There we go. That'll be good enough, I think. I haven't seen one of these before. I assume it goes on top just like that, just to maybe keep more fuel out. I don't know. Alright, so for wiring this thing, there are a few ways we can do this. The simplest way, which I'm probably going to end up doing, is just taking the power and ground wires off of the pump and splicing them straight into the factory harness here, and then I can just use the power and ground wires here to go to my fuel switches, you know, inside the car. Another way to do it would be to drill 2 holes in this cap right here, and then take something like one of these little grommets, pop, you know, each grommet in, and then run the wires through the grommet through the hole, and then take something like this, you know, fuel-resistant RTV gasket stuff and kind of seal it off that way. That's another way of doing it. The proper way of doing it is probably getting 2 bulkhead fittings that are designed for wiring to go through this, and then you hook up each of these cables to the bulkhead fittings, and then, you know, you go through that way. Of course, if there are any issues with this setup, I can just cut these wires out and then put these straight to the top and do it that way later on. Alright, well, it's far from the prettiest thing, but it is on, it's soldered, and it's all together, so I'm going to put it back in the tank, and hopefully there's going to be no issues here. Alright, so we've got the filter in place. Everything is correctly bolted down. I have my new wires spliced in. I think I'm ready to reinstall the pump. Alright, well with any luck, this will just be the last time I take this panel off until I get a new fuel cell. So here we have the fuel level sending unit. This is the float that lets you know where the actual fuel level is in the tank. And I don't know what this sensor is, but I'll figure that out and put it in text below. But what I need to do here is figure out where all these wires go up to this connector up here and just mark off which is which so I know where to connect to my wiring harness later on. So this thin black line that goes to this sensor goes up on the back side to this piece right here. So I'm going to put, I don't know, I guess S for the sensor on that. And then the red line, or the red wire, goes to this side. So I'll put P for power here. And then the black line, the ground's on this side. So I'll put a G for ground right there. So now when I attach this to my wiring harness, I'll know what sensor needs to go where. Okay, so we have the AEM pump installed in the tank, and then the tank reinstalled back in the car, and all hooked up and ready to go. So that's really good progress. I thought this would be a much simpler process than it has been. The fuel system's been a whole bear all on its own. So I'm actually going to split this into two parts. This is part one. Part two will be running the line from the fuel rail all the way back to the FPR, and then hooking everything up underneath the car. That's its own animal, trust me. I've already done a little bit of that and a little bit of this, but so kind of try to look past all of my little inconsistencies of when the tank's out of the car or in the car or whatever. I'm just trying to make it as easy to follow as possible. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned for part 2 coming soon, and please do keep watching Fully Spooled and like or subscribe, and thanks.